Hello guys, and in today's video I'm gonna do a tier list of all the perks in World of Tanks. It will be for all the classes combined, but at the end of the video I will show for each different class different tier list, so if you wanna skip to that you can definitely do that. The tier list is for random battles and it is my personal, but I think it should be balanced, so you can definitely use those perks. So the first perk we are gonna cover is Brothers in Arms. Definitely one of the better perks. You want to have it, and the boosts of those perks are that it increases the crew efficiency bonus by 5%. So you need it on all the tanks, but it won't be an top tier because you don't have to take it as a first or second perk. I think you can take it definitely as a maybe second, but definitely third perk, and you want it on all the tanks, but not as necessary to have at the start. Now, the second one is repairs. It boosts the repair speed of modules by 80%. And now this perk is definitely one of the best, at least was, because you wanted to have quick repair speed of your trucks. Because if you didn't, you will just die. You would just die. But now, with the addition of field mods, hardening, the new boosted repair kits, I think that it is not as necessary. But still, of course, it's good. Because if you have your trucks repaired for 13 seconds and you can't use anything, then you may be just dead. So definitely useful, but because there are many new things, maybe even the new perk that boosts the speed of the consumables, it will be, I think, still in the powerful category, but you don't want to take it on all the crew members. So I think that it will be somewhere around here. For now, I think I will put it in the powerful category, but it may be going down, as we will see later. Now the another perk that is for all the crew members is concealment. So for light tanks, definitely the best perk. For heavy tanks, definitely the worst perk. It effectively increases the camouflage of the tank by 80%. So for heavy tanks, absolutely useless, don't take it. Because heavy tanks have like 1% of camouflage already, the perk does like nothing to them. So for heavy tanks, it is here in the garbage category. But for light tanks, it is the most important perk. If you don't have it, you are just throwing. Definitely first perk for light tanks, so should be here. And because on the other tanks it is like sometimes good, sometimes bad, so I think it is now just for average. For the light tanks it will be S tier, and I will show the tier list later, but for the heavy tanks it's garbage, so it will be somewhere in the middle, unfortunately. And now we are going into the category of crew member perks. So those were the perks for each crew member that every one of them had, and now only one crew member has these perks. So we will start with the captain's perks, so the commanders. And first we have recon. It increases the view range by 2% and reduces the penalty that you will have for the observation devices. So the view range part is important, but 2% is not that much, and it won't be useful on heavy tanks and some medium tanks with a good view range, because you don't really need that. But on the light tanks and the tanks with bad view range, you will definitely use that, because each percent will matter to them. Although for sometimes it will be like 4th or 5th perk to take, so definitely not as important, and I don't think it is that good, but I think it should belong into the average category. Now the next perk that we have is emergency. So it is a new perk that was added not long time ago in the update, and after you get hit, it increases the crew bonus by 5% for 15 seconds. So definitely good for tanks with high HP pool, because you will get hit a lot and you will take a lot of damage, so this perk will work a lot of the time. But for the tanks like light tanks that have not much HP, I don't think it will be good. Although I think it is useful perk to have, so definitely take it as a third or fourth perk. So I think it's a above average perk and just a good perk for now. And now we have another new perk, which is coordination. It increases the aiming speed by 12.5% for 15 seconds after you spot the enemy tank. So you may think that it may be good for light tanks and heavy, and not that good for heavy tanks and everything else. But you would be wrong. This is for me the best or second best perk in the game. It is basically a free equipment. Because there is an equipment that increases your aiming speed, but by only 10%. Even though it works sometimes and only for 15 seconds, the bonus that it gives is just huge. So I definitely recommend to use that even as a first perk. Maybe not on light tanks, but on everything else. Even with heavy tanks and tank destroyers, you will need it because you just use it so often. You may think that heavy tank will not benefit from that, but you would be wrong, because if you fight against another heavy tank, he sometimes will hide for 10-15 seconds and then you spot him again and the bonus still applies. So definitely I would think that this is one of the best perks in the game. I very like it. You can also boost it so it gives you more than 12% to your accuracy time aiming. So definitely one of the best perks in the game for me. 100%. Now, another perk that we have is sound detection. It issues an alert while the art is firing with some delay, but it's short, and it also decreases the effect of the stunning by 10%. So for me it's very situational. Maybe good for some light tank and heavy tanks. For heavy tanks you just can't dodge the arty shell, because even though it shows you that the art is shooting at you, what do you take from this information? You just can't go forward and backward, because just the arty has such a big dispersion that it can land anywhere. But the stun negative bonus is definitely good, so I think that although 10% is not that good, it is why you can use this perk. Also it can stack, so that's the only thing I would take from this perk. Another thing that we have is mentor. So this perk increases the amounts of XP earned by 20% for all the crew members. And also it's when the other crew members are dead, the commander can replace them with more effectiveness. For me, it's also a situational perk. If you have a bot crew and you will farm it fast, then maybe. But then again, you have to change your perks for the commander later on. So I think it can be used sometimes with a bot crew, but I wouldn't recommend running it for the bonuses. And now the last commander perk is practicality. So it decreases the cooldown speed of consumables by 10%. Definitely a useful perk, definitely balanced. I would say that it is good to have, not that important because sometimes you just won't use it. But I think that you definitely may run this perk. Definitely better than Recon though, because Recon just doesn't give that much. Or for light tank it does, but for heavy tanks not really. So now we have the perks from the gunner. First perk that we will cover here is the snapshot. Decreases the dispersion of the gun while turning the turret rotation by 7.5%. So definitely a nice perk to have. It will come in handy because you always turn your turret, so you will just always have a smaller circle to while turning turret. Definitely usable. You will just hit more shots, you can just snapshot more time, and yeah, definitely I would say above average perk, but it doesn't give so much benefits to take it higher. And yeah, you want to take it, but as a fourth, maybe first, not first, maybe third perk, something like that. Now, another perk that we have here is Deadeye. So this perk is also situational, but it can be useful, definitely. It is only useful, I would say, for tanks with high alpha damage and magazines, because it basically increases the critical damage to the modules by 3% while you shoot at those modules. So you can just blow up tank easier, and I think that it can be useful for magazines because there aren't that many good perks from the gunner. So for magazines and tanks with high alpha, definitely good. But other than that, it is pretty useless. So I think it is an underwhelming perk for now. Not always usable. And yeah. Now, another perk that we have here is the design target. This perk is definitely not known about by much. I don't think that many people will use it. It has two bonuses. First of all, it shows you which modules the enemy has destroyed or broken. So that is meh. That can be okay-ish, but I wouldn't use it for that. But the other bonus is that if you are sniping at the target, so if you are, for example, in a tank destroyer and you are looking at someone, he will stay spotted for 2 more seconds. So that's definitely a nice thing to have. You can just shoot maybe one more time, maybe you will manage to shoot an enemy that will be hidden elsewhere. So yeah, definitely a useful perk. Not on each tank, because on heavy tanks you won't be using that, but I think that it can be useful. Also the second ability may be useful in heavy tanks. If you know that your enemy has destroyed ammo rack, then you could shoot him twice as much. But yeah, I'm not certain about that. But yeah, definitely okay-ish perk. Now another perk that we have is concentration. And on the surface it should be good because it decreases the dispersion of the gun while staying still by 3.5%. Although the effect only starts after 3 seconds and the effect isn't that big, I think that this perk isn't that good because you don't want to stay still. If you wanna stay still, you are playing tank destroyer, so not many, and also you have to be sniping tank destroyer, so not a tank like E3 or something like that. So I think that it is a little underwhelming. Because yeah, in heavy tanks you have to move all the time. Light tanks also. Medium tanks, again, you have to move because you don't want to get hit. And when you move, you just don't activate this perk. So I think it's a little underwhelming. If you don't agree, you can say something in comments, but that is the perk for me. Now, another perk that we have is also a little underwhelming for me, and it is quick aiming. It increases the turret rotation and aiming speed by 2.5%. So, technically a good perk, but there is a but. The bonuses from this one are minimal. Aiming time by 2.5% is just not seeable. you just can't notice that so much, and that's why I don't really take this perk, because this one coordination gives like 5 more times the benefit. Even though it activates sometimes, when it activates you can feel the difference. Your gun is faster, more accurate, and that's why this perk is so powerful and this one isn't. If you have a slow turret speed, yeah, definitely I would recommend to take it, but as a 4th, maybe 5th perk. And the last perk from the gunner is Armorer. This one is also a new one. It reduces the potential damage and penetration by 20%, and also decreases the gun dispersion by 1.5%. So definitely a nice perk for me to have. I would say because it decreases the penetration values. So as you know, we have RNG in World of Tanks, and your penetration, for example, if you do 1000 damage and you have 100 penetration, then the RNG can make it happen that you deal 1250 damage and have 75 penetration, 75 millimeters of penetration. And that is how the RNG works. It can go up and down 25%. You don't really see the penetration one, but you definitely can see the damage one in games. And having less of that factor is definitely a benefit, because you know what you are penning. Sometimes, of course, you won't be doing as much and your lucky shot won't be penning, but I think that is a good perk. Also, the benefit is nice because it always works, the gun dispersion one. So I think that it is definitely an average perk, maybe a little above average. You know what, let's take it as a weak but a good perk. I would say, yeah, definitely here. So another perk that we will cover is designated target. And where is it? Oh no, we covered that earlier, yeah, sorry for that. And yeah, another perk that we have is situational awareness, right? Yeah, so it's just a better recon. It increases your view range by 3%. Not that much, but it's 50% more than recon. So definitely needed on those tanks with a bad view range or light tanks, because if you wanna spot you have to have as much view range as possible. So better recon, so better tier. Not much else to that. Now another perk that we have here is side by side. It's also a new addition to perks, and this one I think is useful on heavy tanks 100%, because with heavy tanks you just play on a heavy flank and all the heavy tanks go there, so you will stand next to your allies. On light tanks though, it was definitely the worst perk, because you are just not going with your teammates. Light tanks should go alone to spot or do something. So on heavy tanks definitely useful, on light tanks definitely garbage. On the rest it depends, but not as useful on heavy tanks, not as bad on light tanks. Also the boost isn't that big, so I think it is like somewhere here in the average category. Now another perk that we are having is jamming. What that is doing is just decreases your time you are spotted. So I think the base time is like 10 or 12 seconds. I think 10. So you will be spotted by 9 if there are no other bonuses. In the random battles it's okay. It can be useful. It isn't that good. I think it's below average, but in Onslaught, when you take this perk and you take the module that decreases your spotted speed by 2 seconds, you are spotted for only 1 second. So in Onslaught, definitely I would take it on light tanks, heavy tanks, even everything. But in random battles, and as I said, this is for random battles tier list, I think it is little underwhelming. Maybe not that much, but definitely a little yes. Now another one you may think that it's also useless, but I wouldn't agree. This one makes your notification for being spotted appear almost second earlier, 0.75 seconds to be exact. So sometimes it can definitely save your life. For example, you are in a bush, you are a light tank, and you see that notification that you are spotted, so you can just do it faster. You can run away from the bush faster. On heavy tanks, that's the most useless tanks also. The most useless perk. But on light tanks, definitely useful, I would say. On TDs also. But because it's bad on on heavy tanks as jamming, I think I will have to put it somewhere in the underwhelming category. Now, another perk that is good for light tanks and bad for heavy tanks. So, communication expert. It increases the crew bonus by 2.5% when you spotted or have assistance damage greater than your health. So, again, on light tanks, definitely one of the best perks. On heavy tanks, definitely one of the worst perks. Because on heavy tanks you have so much HP that you won't be doing that much with this perk. So definitely I think it is somewhere in the average category, because you can definitely use it on medium tanks as well. But if you have too much HP, it wouldn't be as useful. So I think it will be one of the worst perks in average category. And now we are getting into another crewmate. This time it is the Radiooperator. Oh no, not yet. We are still having the... sorry for my mistake. Firefighting is the last one for the Radiooperator. And I think that is useful if for example you are Russian or Chinese, I think, heavy tank, and you burn easily. Definitely useful perk to have. If you don't burn so easily, you don't need it, but it can save your life sometimes. So definitely average perk. And now we have a driver, so another crewmate. And the first perk that we have here is the clutch braking. It basically increases your hull traverse speed by 5%. So it's nice to have on some tanks with slow traverse speed, but on other tanks with fast, I don't really recommend it. It's not useful then, and yeah, I think it will be also going into the niche category section. Yeah, something like that, I would say. Oh. But another product that we are having is smooth riding. So it basically decreases your gun dispersion while moving. So definitely a good perk to have. It's again a perk that improves your stabilization while moving. Not by a huge much, but definitely useful. So you want to have this one. Definitely somewhere in the good perks category. I don't know where, because the bonus isn't that big, and also firing while moving isn't that important. I mean, it is, but you use the snapshot, I think, much more than the smooth ride one. So I think I will put it somewhere like that. And now the next perk which we are having is the interesting one. It is the off-road driving. So it reduces the speed loss on some terrains. I won't be reading them because I will just not say it correctly. But what it does, it just makes you faster on rough terrain. So for tanks that have bad power to weight ratio, for example, like What is the tank? I don't really know now, but the tanks that don't go the top speed that they could, definitely add good perk. For the tanks that achieve their top speed fast, definitely not as useful, but I think it is somewhere around the average category, so definitely you can definitely use it. I would even say something like that, yeah. Now the next one, I can't just say this one because I don't know, I can't speak, I guess. But what it does, it increases your HE shells damage absorption and falling damage. And the first one it does by 10% and the second one by 30%. So if the art is shooting at you, the art will deal less damage. If someone is spamming HE at you and not panic, it will do also less damage. And now, yeah, I don't think that... I don't really know about this one. If it decreases the damage from the penetrated HE shells, then definitely this one would be somewhere around the average perks, maybe even above average. But I don't think that it is working like that, so I think that it is going into the situational tier, because again, anti-archer perk, you don't want to crash, so you won't be needing that. And yeah, I think that this perk is not that important to have. Maybe on light tanks, because sometimes they are shooting HEs at you and bouncing and not panning, so you will take less damage, but I don't know about this one. Now the next one is the controlled impact one. So basically what you do when you're ramming, you take less damage and do more damage. And you might think that it is only for troll builds, but it can be definitely useful. For example, when you are playing the EBR, you definitely ram many light tanks, and it will be definitely a useful perk to have, even on clan battles. If you have light tank versus light tank, you definitely will need that. Most for the EBRs. Also for IS-7, CS63 and E50M, definitely a useful perk to have. Not that much, although you won't be using it that much, because if you ram someone, you don't ram someone. What I mean is, it isn't often that you ram someone, so won't be that useful. So I will say it is somewhere again in the niche or underwhelming category. And the next perk that we have here is the Engineer. So it increases your speed forward and backwards by 1 kilometer and also reduces the penalty to the engine by 20%. So the penalty thing isn't that big, so it won't be affecting you that much. And the top speed by 1% is also not a huge difference. On some tanks that have bad going back speed, so the backward speed, for example the American tanks, they have almost all of them have terrible speed going backwards. For example the FV, the British TD, has also a bad speed going backwards. That will be useful then, but going on the average tank, I don't think that it is a good tank. You can take something better. So I think it is somewhere still again in the niche and underwhelming category. For light tanks, absolutely useless, don't take it, and yeah. And now the last set of crew perks, the most important one for me. Now the perks for the low adder. The most important guy in your crew, because he has all the best perks here. First perk that you have here, Adrenaline Rush. When your vehicle HP is less than 25%, the gun reload speed is increased by decreased by 5%. So definitely useful on tanks with much HP, 100% usable. For example, E100 mouse, is IS-7, ST2, any heavy tank. I think any heavy tank you want to have it, because you will be under 25% HP pool every battle most of the time, so you will definitely use this one. But on something like a light tank, Grille maybe, something like a light TD, I wouldn't say it is a good perk. So even though you want it on most of the tanks, not on every tank, so definitely somewhere in the powerful category, definitely one of the best perks to take. Maybe not as a first one, but as a second or third, because the low adder has so many good perks. Now, another perk that we have here is safe storage. So basically it increases the HP of your ammo rack. If your tanks blow up easily or the ammunition gets destroyed easily, definitely you need to take this one. It will help a little, maybe not even a little, I mean by not much it will help definitely, but on most of the tanks I wouldn't say it is very necessary. So it is somewhere around the average category again. And now we have, for me, the best perk in the current World of Tanks, the intuition. It basically decreases your changing shell speed by 60%. Even though the 60% isn't much, the ventilation and many other things boost it, and you can even take it up to the 90 maybe percentage. So it is useful on all the tanks. If you don't use gold too much, even more useful, because you want to change from the APs to the gold shells and the HEs. So definitely one of the best perks in the game. Although if you gold spam and you don't take HEs, maybe not that good, but for most of the players on most of the tanks, definitely one of the best perks. I would even put it as the best. And yeah, that is intuition. Definitely you need to take this one as a first perk to take. And the third last perk is close combat. So it basically decreases your gun reload time by 2.5% when you are close to the enemy, so under 50 meters, so the instant spotting range. For heavy tanks, definitely a good perk, because you will be fighting up close, you will be using that. Definitely useful perk to have. Although for light tanks and some sniping tanks, not as good. For them it would be even situational, maybe even garbage. But for most of the tanks it will be definitely useful. Now we have perfect charge. So perfect charge increases your shell speed by 10%. Of course you can boost it, I think up to 13%. Definitely useful, it's nice to have. I mean, who doesn't like to have fast shells? So, although, because the low order has so many good perks, it won't be as high. I very enjoy this perk. When you are sniping, you are hitting your shells faster, you are hitting the target faster, it's easier to kill EBRs, light tanks, and anything moving. So definitely if you play much of the game behind the 200 meter line, I would say you should use it. But if you are not, then it's just an average perk. But I think I will put it in the good perk category, because sometimes it can make your shots just hit. And the last perk that we have here is ammo tuning. Basically it gives you, on most of the tanks, it increases the minimal damage and minimal potential of penetration by 2%. So in the game it shows like you have just higher alpha damage and higher alpha penetration. So for example, if you have 1000 damage at start, it will increase your damage to 1200. Not 1200, 1020. So definitely useful on most of the tanks, but there is a huge but. If you are playing Czech light tanks, this perk is the best, the most broken perk in the game. I would even put it somewhere around here, in the super broken category, but I don't have it. Why? You may ask why. And that's because they have so low damage that it increases their damage by 1. So if you have on those light tanks 10 damage, so or 12 or 8 potential damage, alpha damage, it increases your damage to 9 and 13. So with that, it basically gives you so much DPM. For example, on Blesk, you have, I think, 6 alpha damage. And if you take this one, it increases your alpha damage to 7. So you do 16% much more damage. And that is just definitely one of the broken things in the game. Definitely must have on those Czech light tanks. You just are then so much more powerful. Your clip size makes it much better. But on most of the other tanks, it just gives you more damage, more penetration. Not by much, but it gives, so it's a good perk. And yeah, that's all the perks for all the categories. And I will show you now for heavy tanks and light tanks and medium tanks and tank destroyers. And yeah. And now the tier lists for each of the class separately. So we have here for light tanks, definitely the concealment is the king here. As you can see, some things changed. There are many situational perks here, but there are many just good perks and powerful. So that will be for light tanks. Now, this I think is for medium tanks, so not many garbage perks. Still coordination and intuition in S tier. As you can see, those perks are also still powerful here. Some of them dropped back. You can see right here. I won't be going into details about this. Now we will have about the heavy tanks. Yeah, it's about heavy tanks. As you can see, the coordination is still here. I consider it not very good, but the adrenaline rush is also here because it's definitely good for heavy tanks. I don't know though, yeah, it's very good. You always almost trigger it, even though it's later in the battle. Close combat emergency definitely got up, but there are many garbage tier for heavy tanks, so definitely try to not use them. Yeah, as you can see, that's for heavy tanks, and the last one is for tank destroyers. So this is for tank destroyer. I don't think coordination is then that good for them. Intuition definitely. Concealment, yeah. And perfect charge, I think that's for destroyers definitely very useful. You can see, you can pause for a bit, and yeah. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please hit a like button. If you want something to say, hit a comment. Thank you very much, and see you next time.